Welcome everyone to today's City Art and Lectures webcast, which is in place of what would have been a live event at the Sydney Goldstein Theater on May 7th in San Francisco, California. I'm Jenna Wortham. I am a writer for the New York Times Magazine, and I am the co-host of a podcast called Still Processing. And today with me is Jia Tolentino, a badass staff writer at The New Yorker, whose recent work includes an exploration of youth vaping and many essays on the ongoing cultural reckoning around sexual assault. Previously, she was the deputy editor at Jezebel and a contributing editor at the Hairpin. She grew up in Texas, attended UVA, served in the Peace Corps, and received an MFA in fiction from the University of Michigan. Her first book, a stellar essay collection called Trick Mirror, was published in August. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Jenna.
Hi, friend.
How are you?
Right now, this moment in time, I'm so happy to see you. The last time I saw you was over a year ago. No, I saw you at your book launch, actually. But it just feels good to be reunited. It feels good to touch in and see how people are doing. How are you?
I'm good. Right now, I'm good because it is really nice to see you. But it's funny, like that, obviously, how are you? Such a loaded question right now,
Yeah.
And it's funny, like I was saying to my boyfriend last night, I don't know if you're finding this, but I'm not, like, I tend to be a pretty even keel. I'm not a moody person. I feel these days like, and I don't know whether it's because it's, we've all been in the house for, 50 days, or if it's, I'm 24 weeks pregnant. So I'm like, maybe it's that, but I feel that, like vibes are coming and going really quickly and sharply and abruptly these days, like big clouds of restlessness and sadness. And then sometimes they lift right away when a friend sends you something or something, but it's funny how like it's really a much more moment by moment thing than it's not even really a day by day thing. It's an hour by hour. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I definitely feel that. I feel like how I'm feeling changes like incrementally throughout the course of the day. And it's really asked for a lot of patience. Like I feel like I have to be really patient with myself, because sometimes when I'm feeling, like nothing's wrong, but all of a sudden I'm feeling really excited or really down, I just have to be like, that's where you're at.
Right.
And just bring that to the table, be okay with it.
Yeah, I found this period. I mean, I had been for a while, maybe since I finished my book, I had been trying to like loosen. I feel like we probably talked about this at McDowell too. I've been trying to loosen my relationship to productivity. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, let's talk about it. Go on.
Well, I've been trying to sort of, I think I don't know. I feel a complicated way about this because it's like I feel extraordinarily lucky to be able to be fulfilled by my job. I feel like right now it's so obvious that to have a job that fulfills you and that you can really throw yourself into and that absorbs you sort of emotionally and intellectually, that is a supreme luxury that the vast majority of people don't have. But as a result, like I kind of have a fucked up relationship with productivity where I sort of like this happened when I finished my book and I read Jenny Odell's How to Do Nothing, and I was like, I've organized my entire life around production and very little around like care, and I think that this period has been kind of useful in being like, oh, it's not like, it's so clearly not true that the best thing we could be doing is like doing something. Sometimes you just gotta play, you just gotta let it be. There's like sort of an enforced patience to this period that I'm finding instructive and useful, like you were saying.
How is that showing up in your day-to-day? Are you doing less? Do you feel compelled to write more? Are you trying to, I think there's a sense too of like, I should be taking in more material. So like get through my reading list or get through my TV queue, or, which is complicated, right? Because that actually is an active engagement. That's not really resting. But I'm curious as a critic, kind of how that's showing up for you.
Well, I wanted to ask you that too, because I want to know what like has broken through, like what's broken through the kind of fog, you know what I mean? I was listening to the Still Processing episode on the Fiona Apple album. And that was one for me that really like cut right into, like made me feel extremely present. And that was, but I think I'm still working a lot, and I'm kind of glad to be. Like, there's a way in which I've never been more grateful that being like reporting allows you to speak to strangers. I feel like in a lot of ways work has allowed me to feel connected to the world. And also I think I've been aware, of all of these kind of arbitrary privileges that kind of demarcate my life. Like, I think a lot of my friends, they have to separate their anxiety about what's going on right now from their work. But I think my work is only about that right now in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I've been reporting a really long piece about mutual aid that's closing like tomorrow. And it's been nice to sort of like, I feel a renewed sense of gratitude for that. But yeah, I think I've been trying for the last few years to get better at like the work at home thing where you're like, you know what, my brain's not working. I'm going to cook for 2 hours. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to fuck off. And then like, later tonight, I'll pick it back up. And I've been doing that a lot. And I definitely like, I've been watching nothing. I've been reading Wolf Hall. I've been, I think, doing less than normal. What about you?
Well, it's funny to hear you mention McDowell too, because I feel so grateful for that time.
Yeah.
Because it really helped me figure out the best times of day for my brain.
Yeah.
Like, I'm such a morning thinker and I'm such a morning writer. And I think I used to use that time to just power through my to-do list or power through my emails. Whereas now I know that's like my prime thinking time.
Yeah.
Not online shopping. Like, I should be like,
I love online shopping in the morning though. The focus is there.
It's so sharp.
Yeah.
Like, no regrets. I'm just
exactly.
done.
Yeah.
Decisions were made.
Yeah.
But it was really helpful for me to figure out like my time to shine is till like 2 or 3 p.m. And then the rest of the day for me can be research. So that can look like reading, that can look like watching something, that can look like listening to something.
Right.
That's usually when I would take a really big, long walk to kind of just disperse all the energy. And I've kind of stopped doing that because I'm still in Bed-Stuy and it's just dense. The streets are dense. And so it's not relaxing. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've been trying to shift my relationship to productivity for the last couple of years. And I think it's really challenging. I've been working so much more. I feel
during
so
quarantine?
burnt out during quarantine.
Really?
Because we decided, I mean, the podcast was on hiatus for a little while.
Right. And y'all brought it back.
We brought it out of retirement. I mean, it wasn't retired, but we brought it back specifically to do these living room sessions. And on one hand, it's such an anchor. It's like, the ritual of being in it with Wesley is just so sustaining and nourishing. And we talk on the phone all the time. We text all the time. And he's just one of my favorite people. And so having, that as kind of this mirror for me constantly is really terrific. But we're also, because of the heightened and expedited production schedule and that it's remote, we're taping, we taped a little bit this morning. We tape 2 or 3 days a week now. And there's just no break. Yeah. So I'm like, and then on top of that, there's just other stuff happening. And then, also wanting to write for the paper and write for the magazine. So it's really interesting. And I think something I'm trying to really make space for is just that there isn't space to process. There isn't space to take in.
Absolutely.
That a lot of the distressing information is just sitting in front of me and I have to just be okay with it until later.
One thing that I feel like I've gotten better at saying no during this time, which is another thing that I have been trying to, my eager to please fucking nature or whatever. And I think I've gotten better at saying I have absolutely nothing to say on this subject. Like, I feel translations of my book are coming out in different countries. And so I'm doing a lot of foreign interviews, which are kind of amazing. Like, I've been talking to a lot of journalists in Spain and Italy, and it's I find it really moving to be speaking to people from like epicenters of the lockdown, and like to be in each other's kind of virtual presences for a really intense hour. But there's been, I don't know if, I'm sure you've been getting a ton of this sort of like, this is X place wanting to check in about like what's making you feel good during quarantine and like what you make of it and what you think it means for journalism and what you think, and I fully just straight up have been like, of all the times where, the idea that I could offer some vision of the future. I mean, that idea is always a little ludicrous to me. Like right now, it's so like, we don't know what next month is going to look like. Like, I certainly can't, like, I feel completely incapable of sweeping statements about, I mean, you know, there are certainly like sweeping thoughts I've been having about the world in this situation, as I'm sure you have, but like in terms of the ability to sort of pronounce and sum up and like neatly process, like I've been glad to be like, I can't, and that's fine. And that's not what we're supposed to, like, we're not, the discomfort and the uncertainty is like, whatever is the ground that whatever is politically productive is going to grow out of. You know what I mean? Like
Definitely.
it's been nice to be like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that you're able to create some of that distance and have boundaries around that work, because I think the asks can be so high. And especially, you know, I feel like you've come into the spotlight as someone who's thinking so critically about the self and selfhood and sort of the ways we comport ourselves online and off. And so I can imagine that there's just such like so many people, I'm sure, are just like clamoring to hear from you. And so I'm glad that you're kind of taking a step back. And I also think, you know, we've become so accustomed to quick consolidation or just like quick distillations of moments.
Yeah.
You know, like the last couple of years in media writing, even criticism, just online social media in general has been like, what's the most important thing I need to know about a moment or a TV show or an idea or a movement? And everything about COVID resists that. You know, it's like such an evolving thing. So much of that also is just due to the total ineptitude of our administration to get any information out about it properly and responsibly. But, you know, it's just really fascinating because none of the instincts that the way we've had to deal with news over the last even like decade or so makes sense right now.
Yeah. I mean, I even think like basic, like individualism, you know, like there's a way in which like just the limits of so many ways of thinking, so many dominant ways of thinking have been brought just like really hard to the forefront, you know? Yeah. It is like one question that I've been getting a lot is like, is this going to make the internet fundamentally different and better? You know? And I'm like, you know, and I'm like, well, I mean, I personally don't I don't think so. I mean, to me, it's like, as long as, you know, the economic foundation of the internet is surveillance capitalism, it seems like it is what it is, but I have been more grateful for, the internet's gotten a little softer and weirder and lately, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, that's something I actually wanted to talk to you about too, because I'm really fascinated by, you know, how everything has just kind of condensed to these boxes and to these screens. Like art is now being made through these screens. You know, people are trying to reconfigure how humor works through these screens.
Yeah.
We're seeing like a vast uptick in adoption of so many services, including like TikTok, because people just have a lot more time on their hands to figure out these new mediums. And the effect is the impression of a softness. And I really wonder, you know, I don't know. I wonder if I'm like struggling because part of me loves the gentleness. And then I'm also like, it's an impression, you know?
That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I love that Times piece about the professional dancers who are bored and getting on TikTok, you know, and just like crushing all the, you know,
I know.
It's so sick. But yeah, I mean, I think like to me, you know, and I think we both, you know, might agree on this because I feel like we've both spoken about this before, but to me, it is always really wonderful to watch people try to be really human on inhuman systems, right? Like on systems that are structured to sort of, you know, like as that Jenny Odell phrasing that like never gets out of my head is to sort of algorithmically entomb us and like make us glossier and, you know, just like increasingly just sort of surveyed and monetized and gridded. But you know, the way people try to be human on them is, you know, continues to be really like irreducible in a lot of ways. Right. And but it always exists alongside the incentives that underpin it. Right. Like it always, no matter the degree to which our voluntary behavior softens, the underlying structure to me is so dehumanizing that there's no getting around that. Like we can change the way we voluntarily respond to self-surveillance And we can change our manners of self-surveillance, but we can't change the involuntary surveillance and what is, what's done with that economically that underpins all of these networks. And so to me, it's like, you're right. It's like at most it's, it's a softening of the surface, which to me, I'm like thinking about this exists alongside the fact that like, I mean, if we weren't able to sort of to FaceTime our friends right now, like, I mean, I'd really be off the deep end, like there's a degree to which my kind of like all of our sort of non-representative individual interpersonal interaction with it is so wonderful and necessary that I think it's making people think things about the system that are not necessarily applicable. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
It's so funny because before this, like imagine someone just randomly FaceTiming you during the day. You would be like, unless it was like your homie or Andrew, you would just be like, the fuck,
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh my God, hello. Like, I don't care if I'm in the bathtub. Like, this is the first time I've had makeup on in weeks. Like, I just am like so eager for human connection and also just like inner circle, like to see how they're doing that. I'm just like, y'all privilege everything. Like, contact me anytime. And so there's a part of it that's like those, the boundaries, like the ways in which, and I love that you keep mentioning Jenny Odell too, because that book was so important to read and for me. I'm still reading it and thinking about it, but like thinking about managing my relationship to attention, thinking about what it means to have my own, sacred brain space that has nothing to do with a screen. And it's something I've had really rigorous boundaries around historically. And all of that's gone because I can't I just can't regulate how much I'm using my devices. And so it just cracks me up to think about Mark Zuckerberg somewhere in a room, just like this is his fucking wet dream. Like he's so excited.
I mean,
now.
tech is the only industry. I mean, well, like these social networks, it's like, usership is way up. Yeah. After the first week when I got my weekly screen time alert and I was just like,
oh yeah.
Don't show me.
I haven't had that on, but I just turned it on because I feel like I need to know. My book partner and friend was like, my friend Kimberly was like, my hours are 10 to 11 a day. Yeah. And I was like, what? Like, wait, how is that possible? And she was like, I don't know, but I have to like, take a break.
Mine are not good. But you're right. I mean, if it's, cause like normally the things that are reliable to me as like one thing that I think this moment with the internet is doing, it's also reminding us that, there's so much that is almost supernaturally magical about the internet, right? I mean, we can be talking right now. I can look at your plant. Like, I feel so grateful for that. And at the same time, it will never usurp, like all these systems are set up to make these incentives appear stronger than real life ones. Right. And I think that so much of like the internet, like the sort of para world of the internet is always trying to make itself seem more important than real life, more determinative or something, but it never is. And it doesn't feel that way. And I think we're also reminded of that right now, like nothing compares to actual presence. These things are so wonderful, but they are wonderful because they remind us of how much we want to be with each other. Right. Like it's,
such a good point.
And it's like the way that, my screen time is just really shameful because I want to be texting my friends for 2 hours randomly because, because it's the closest thing we can get to the thing we really want, which isn't to be texting our friends for 2 hours, but it's to be sitting across from them at a crowded restaurant, and just feeling, like there's a way in which the limits, like the incredible possibility, but also the really hard limits of the internet seem to be presenting themselves.
Yeah. I also feel like there's almost an underlying or invisible, I don't know, like morality, like value quotient that's being assigned to certain behaviors or certain things. Like, Zooming is good, like FaceTiming is good. It's good to be connected. It's good to be doing these things. But then you hear about like Airbnb laying off almost 2,000 employees or like WeWork or like Instacart and like those are bad. Like, it's just, there's something really interesting of like a value assignment that's kind of happening because of our, because of the way we interact with technology, even though like the services we're using the most are just as guilty of perpetuating the same harms that the companies that it's more obvious just because I don't know, it's that veil is being lifted much faster. And so I'm super intrigued by kind of where that leads us. And that's the thing I'm trying to be most vigilant around, is
Yeah.
like remembering that just because Instagram isn't making, me spiral anymore, doesn't mean it's still a healthy obsession or preoccupation.
Right.
And I feel like that's the thing that's like the trickiest right now to remember, is that the lifelines that feel so essential are still so toxic.
Right.
And it's really hard.
It's really hard. Right. I mean,
really
I've had a
hard.
hard time, like, all the privacy stuff with Zoom. I'm still like, whatever, like,
Yo,
like,
the CEO keeps having
I'm still going to show you this weird thing on my boob. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, that has also happened for me. Like I'm just a lot less inhibited. Like, I don't know. I've been really into, some of the like Zoom parties that have happened,
Yeah.
just because I kind of miss my broader community.
Yeah.
And, I think, as a queer person and as a Black person, like during times of crisis, we gather.
Yeah.
Like that is what you do.
Right.
And so it feels really strange not to be able to show up at someone's house or just to be able to sit in people's living
Yeah.
rooms. That was a lot of what was happening after things like the election or
Right.
things like Pulse. It was just showing up and like being bodies in a space,
Right.
because that is such a powerful reminder of life.
Right.
So I've been really into these like Zoom raves that have been happening, and a lot of them are kind of private. But I'm like, the other day I was like cooking in my kitchen, and then the Meg Thee Stallion remix with Beyonce came on, and I was like, what? And I just like pulled up my dress and was just like twerking on my counter.
Yeah.
But then I was like, this is still a webcam, Jenna. Like this is still I had on like bikini bottoms, so I didn't feel totally exposed, but I was just like, I was like, all the
AI, like the robot in Beijing is like, wow, like, it's like ass, like,
it's like, yeah.
That remix
in the works.
I mean, there have been I've been like, I think my relationship to attention, like I normally do not have trouble like fully absorbing myself in almost anything, but especially at the beginning, that's been hard for me.
Mm-hmm,
and I think it's just been hard for me to feel like as sharply there as I normally do. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Also something that I rarely have trouble with. And then like things like the Fiona album and that remix, like, like Beyonce started rapping and I was like, whew, like I'm fully in my body again. Like,
Yeah. They're both deep works of art. I mean, I think too, it's like that kind of, they feel like care packages. They feel intentionally dropped. They feel like they're meant to kind of be balms. And so I think that's something that's, that of course we're responding to, rather than like, I don't know, I actually want to ask you about like what your media diet is right now. If you're watching a lot of interesting things, or what books you already said you were reading Wolf Hall, but I'm just curious too, because I also feel like I'm struggling to consume stuff that doesn't feel resonant. And at the same time, there's like an invisible barometer. If things are too violent or they're too graphic, then I can't engage. And so it's been interesting to sort of see how my own mind is being rewired in terms of what feels tolerable. Yeah. Entertainment wise. I
don't really watch a lot of things. Like I haven't been in quarantine because, I've been watching a lot of bad movies. Like I have a Thursday night movie club where we watch a movie where they say the name of the movie really dramatically in the movie. Which has been good.
Like what's a movie you guys watch?
Well, we've gone really all over the place. Like I think we're kind of rotating like cartoon, like classic bad action movies. So it was like Ratatouille, Love and Basketball, John Wick. You know what I mean? Like that vibe.
So
like
good.
Mulan, 21 Bridges, like that vibe. And I keep being like, did they say Save the Last Dance and Save the Last Dance? Like
I want to rewatch that. I thought those dance sequences were so tight with Julia Stiles back in the day. She's like I would be like, yes,
and it's so whack. Like it's
so
the whack
did not hold up.
It's so funny. She got all these dance moments. Like remember in 10 Things I Hate About You, where she like gets drunk and it's the like the worst. Like it's the worst.
At the time in the theater, I was like,
yeah, me too. Like I was like, those low-rise jeans, baby. Like, 10 Things I Hate About You. I was like, I think that the title's in the movie. We were talking about that one. But
it is.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot, and it's sort of, the Wolf Hall trilogy really helped me because, have you read them?
Mm-mm.
They're
Should I?
really, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not a historical fiction person, but you know, enough of my friends and enough people who, you know, whose opinions I take serious, like who I would listen to are like, these books are, you know, incredible.
Hmm.
And I really, it kind of fixed everything for a little bit because
Hmm.
there's a way in which, like at the beginning of quarantine, I felt kind of overwhelmed with the simultaneity of everything. You know, it's like this kind of weird consciousness that we were living in history, but also like kind of like on this knife edge of something really unpredictable. And like
Mm-hmm.
and everything was happening all at once, you know. And there was something really wonderful about being absorbed in a different historical moment,
Mm.
you know, where things were consequential, but also like there's a like some blurb on the cover of one of the books in the trilogy calls it astringent, and there's a way in which it kind of feels, they feel like that, like they feel like a reminder that living through these monumental things always feels like, you know, just staring off into space and looking at, you know, like a leaf fall for 30 seconds, you know, like
Wow.
the mundanity of the monumental. It's like, it was and it was also just nice to have something that I looked forward to doing every night that wasn't like putting the panda emoji on and like FaceTiming my friends, you know?
Totally.
Um, yeah. What's your media consumption been like?
Mm. Oh God. Well, when we're in production, we're watching a lot of stuff, so it's just been really, really high.
Yeah.
But my my go-to like brain decompression is Survivor. I fucking love Survivor, Gia. Like I'm so deep in it, and like this season is the 40th season, which is nuts to
Have you
me.
seen all of them? One of my friends has seen all of them.
I've
Have
seen
you?
like the vast majority of them.
Damn.
In between seasons, I go back and watch old
Yeah.
seasons because I was like hooked the way most people were when it first came out. And then I was just like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
And then I got back into it actually at McDowell because the people I was there with were really obsessed with it. And so we were watching it in real time and then started like doubling back on old episodes. But it's just like this weird Inception like universe that's folded in on itself because this season is all past winners.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
right.
manic. It's like they all remember how everybody played because they all watch each other's
Uh-huh.
seasons and they're
Uh-huh.
like, Sandra's gonna pull the same type of move that she pulled and you're just like,
That's so interesting.
yeah.
The like
So
awareness of self-consciousness and the like reactivity, like that's really interesting. Maybe I should watch it.
yeah. I don't know. The only thing I'll say that's interesting is, normally when people are playing for money, like they don't know how money can change their lives. They don't know how it can ruin their lives. They don't know how it's going to reshape their terrain. And all of these people are intimately familiar with what it means to win $1 million. And so
Yeah, that's
there's a
wild.
desperation. And I think,
What are they
I don't
playing
know.
for? Are they playing, like, what do you think the motivation is? Like, what to come back, like to win again?
It's
To,
kind of reputation.
yeah,
It's like a very reputation oriented show.
huh?
Like a lot of people come back to either like reclaim a crown or they miss the game. I want to play it. Like it looks fun. Like it just looks so challenging. But
Yeah, I
I
bet you'd be
think,
great at Survivor.
thank you. Thank you. One day I have to learn how to make fire and then I'll do it because that's like the last challenge. You have to be able to
Uh-huh.
make fire from
Oh, you
scratch.
can do that. You can
But
do that.
I have to practice. I just
Yeah.
have to practice. But anyway, yeah. No, that's interesting. I don't know. I think that kind of I've been also really paying attention to like how media is reshaping itself around this particular moment. And, I definitely got into TikTok at the beginning of quarantine. Like I just felt like it had some of the most interesting commentary on what it meant to be quarantined across America and
Yeah.
around the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it feels a little bit more visceral. I know that you've spent so much time thinking about TikTok too, but it's so weird because it lives in its own solar system more or less because it doesn't
Yeah.
have the performativity of Instagram, even though it does. But it has its own
Totally different.
grammar.
Yeah. It has
Yeah,
a
it's
different like physics for sure.
completely different physics, and
Yeah.
it's also not trying to be as smart as Twitter, but it has its
Yeah.
own intellectual
Yeah.
priorities. So I've been looking at a lot of TikTok, but that's one where I have to like set strong limits because I will really spend like
Yeah.
2 hours in the app.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I
We just talked
know.
so much. Okay, I wanted to ask you something too, which is, what do you think? I mean, this is a tough question. So I want to say also that like one of the things I'm holding space for right now is how hard it is to make sense of right now, because
Right.
this is a moment that we will study and process and work through for generations. Like
Yeah.
it's just impossible to know like what we're gonna even know about this time
Yeah.
in a year. Instincts tell me it's not going to be good, but we're
Yeah.
still getting acclimated to this moment. But I don't know. I'm just curious if there's, you had this tweet a few weeks ago, or maybe a few days ago, Time is so strange. That was like one thing that's working for me right now. Actually, I can read it to you if that's not annoying. But it made me really chuckle. It was, let's see if I can pull it up in this vast document. Maybe I can't. I thought I bolded it. But essentially, you were saying one of the things that's serving you right now is being able to say, like, thank you for your request, but my brain is totally mush. Like, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And that's something that you want to take out of this time into whatever the after looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if there's anything else that you're trying to hold on to, like anything else that's come up right now that either in your work or future books that you're just like, this is a kernel of something that I want to remember to plant later.
Well, I've been cutting my sandwiches in triangles, which is honestly doesn't matter, but I'm going to be doing it for the rest of my life. My boyfriend always cuts the sandwiches in triangles, and I'm like, not like normally I'm like, but now I'm like, why wouldn't I?
And you get the best first bite because you get the corner.
Exactly. That's one thing. I think, there are little, I can feel little kernels of things taking shape. And I think that one of the things that's becoming clearer to me right now is that, like, one thing that I've been wondering, kind of puzzling through with myself, and one thing that I think going on book tour, one of the questions that I got asked the most was like, what should we do? Like there was, and I'm sure you get a version of this too. Like it was just, a lot of the book I was writing about like certain contradictions that are somewhat irresolvable. And then the question would be like, like, okay, given that, an entire industry has reorganized itself around the idea that people ought to optimize themselves until they die, what should I do? And, my answer was always like, I don't know. Like, I don't even, like, that question was so, like, the idea that I would tell someone what to do, and that, and I think I spent a lot of time thinking about, like the consequences of like the degree to which individual action mattered versus collective action, because I think that, and I think that this time has clarified both the tie between our individual action and like collective well-being, because I've been thinking so long about how there are just no individual solutions to collective problems, like the real problems, right? And I think that one of the things that are, it's so easy in so many ways to think that like we can work our way out of something that we can't, but lately I guess I've been thinking like it's become a lot clearer to me that what I do day to day doesn't really matter. Like anything I do for myself doesn't really matter. But what really matters is just that I'm staying home, and like the clarity that the sort of like lens that gives me to be like, so in that way, my individual actions do matter greatly insofar as I'm staying home, but insofar as I'm being productive, insofar as I am, like whatever, like these things don't actually matter. Like we would come out of this time and maybe it wouldn't matter at all. What would really matter is just that my actions were in service of collective well-being. And I think it's like, I don't know, there's some, like, I can feel something growing about, like significance versus insignificance. And how, like, I always find a sense of insignificance really comforting, strangely, and kind of, and almost freeing and galvanizing, right? It's like, if we're on the earth for like, there's like an old John McPhee description of time, where I'm reading my colleague Paige Williams's book about dinosaur fossils. I've been thinking a lot about deep time lately. But so John McPhee, he talks about like, if you measure the Earth's existence, the way that like in England, they used to measure the length of a yard from like the king's nose to the tip of his finger or whatever. And if you slice, like he said it, like one stroke of a nail file would cut off all of human existence. And I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
And I find it really freeing, right? It's like if we're barely here for a second, we might as well just do everything we can. But then I always get confused about what doing everything you can means. And right now it's much clearer to me that the arenas in which our work really matters are maybe more helpfully specific than I thought. I don't know.
No, that's very Buddhist also, to just like make peace with the nothingness, and like the nothingness is kind of the goal, and like that's kind of just to really understand yourself and like decenter the ego. I mean, it's about grappling with our own sense of narcissism, which everything about our modern life is like set up to feed, you know? So it's very hard to grapple with that bigness and that smallness.
And then like also the fact that like it is still good to like want to do things, and like you know, like a lot of the drives that are tangled up in narcissism are healthy, like they're, you know, to like live and find pleasure. And you know, like I think I think it's been easier to untangle those things too, right? Like the degree to which like taking care of yourself can be separated from that question of optimization. Like it's a lot clearer for me now. You know, it's like things like this time is weirdly reminding me of when I was in the Peace Corps. And it's funny, like been texting all my Peace Corps, like my Peace Corps friends are like straight chilling right now. Because we were effectively on lockdown for, you know, a long, long time, but didn't have internet, like couldn't go to the grocery store, you know, like it was very, you know, it was much more, I mean, I guess, it was just harder. And like it's been nice to remember that, like, oh yeah, like I did yoga then every morning just so that like I could, you know, retain some sense of evenness throughout the day. And it has nothing to do with anything other than that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I mean, it's also interesting too, because I've been thinking a lot about mutual aid as well. And a lot of, you know, whenever, I mean, 90% of my friend group is out of work right now. And so like really grappling with the fragility of the creative economy, and being grateful that I have a salary.
Yeah,
and
it's
so
wild.
Whenever anybody does anything, I'm just like, I Venmo, I'm like, oh, you're doing a reading? Like I'll Venmo you, like, you know, and it's something that I've been really thinking a lot about. Like, I mean, donating as a journalist is challenging, but you know, like, okay, in the sense of like mutual aid support, like it's probably better for me to support like my immediate network, because it has the impact of easing a little bit of their economic insecurities and worries, but it also has the effect of boosting their sense of community and their feeling of well-being and connectedness and togetherness. But it does nothing for like the broader sense of like structural reform that like is keeping people from getting their stimulus checks. It's like such a strange.
But so I've been spending the last like month thinking about exactly this, and like talking to mutual aid organizers about this question. Because actually, you know, in the original principle of mutual aid, which is an anarchist principle that, you know, the state is like effectively, you know, at best damaging, and, you know, like it's very clear that we're living in a failed state right now. And, you know, I think like that principle, like Mariam Kaba told me on the phone, she was like, we have to act as if the state will never be a protector. Like she was like, it's in, you know, like she was like, it's in my principle as an abolitionist to, you know, prefigure this world that I want to live in, where the state is not the distributor of the security that it willfully denies to, like, you know, so many communities, right? And we have to think of the state as something that, you know, is not a protector and more often actively does harm. And in that way, like these most direct forms of mutual aid, it just like let me like hit you with the Venmo real quick, or like, you know, donating to our, like all these neighbor, like the Bed-Stuy organization, like there's so many, like the really, really direct form of it that's altogether bypassing like not just state systems, but charity too. Like I've been thinking a lot about the ways in which that actually, that is affecting the way we think about structure, because because it's, I guess I've been thinking about how, I mean, my point of view on mutual aid is that a lot of it is doing what this, like it's the socialist view that it's doing what the state ought to be doing. But I've also been thinking through the fact that it's like, why am I still hoping for that? Like, you know what I mean? Like why, like this is all we have. It's what we do for each other right now with the money in our like in our bank account this month. Like it's like there's a way in which that is the structural sort of reckoning,
and maybe that is the reform too.
Exactly,
because I also
right?
think
like
it's really, it's not something you think about doing. Like money is such a fraught thing, and redistributing resources or wealth is a really fraught thing. But right now it seems so painfully obvious that like, right, you're hosting a thing, or I know that you're struggling this month. Like I'm absolutely going to help you out. And if I can, you know, and even that like mental shift has been really fortifying for me, because it's just, you know, I don't know, you never know how you're going to respond to the apocalypse. And so it's like reassuring to be like, this is how people show up for each other.
Absolutely.
And it's, for me, it's like it's still a very small bubble, just in terms of like, I would say a pretty immediate networking community, but I'll be interested to read your piece too, because I am thinking a lot about like the friends who are counting down the days it's been since they've, you know, submitted for unemployment and or even haven't received their stimulus check. And I'm just like, you know, there's something to that too, that waiting or that expectation of help that is really fraught as well, because it's flawed and it's clearly, I mean, I don't know. I feel like talking to people who are trying to get those checks through, like there's something deliberate in the structural and the systemic difficulties of even using the websites, you know, it's like, that's all deliberate.
Well, and just this idea that like one of the qualities that distinguishes mutual aid work from like state services or charities, that there's zero eligibility criteria typically, right? Like the way it isn't for your friends. Like it's not like show me your fucking bank account. You're just like, you know, like I'm still receiving a paycheck for arbitrary reasons of luck. So, you know, just the idea, like, I think one of the things, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, I'm sure we both always feel this way, but I've been wondering more how it is for friends of mine who don't, like my friends in Texas or whatever, who kind of think that people get what they deserve, kind of, that you like work for the money you have and like whatever and all of that, or like things that I like find ludicrous. But this idea that it's so clear right now that it's so arbitrary, like who still has a paycheck coming in. It has nothing to do with anything. Like it means it's no validation of us that we still have work. It's just it's pure, like there's no reason why we should be still having a paycheck where so many people we know don't. There's just no reason for it. And there's never been a reason for it. And, you know, and I think like, it'll be interesting to see to what extent this time like brings that home for people that didn't think that before, you know?
I wonder. I mean, I think there's still a lot of divisiveness, and I think that people are getting more comfortable in their own, you know, their own networks and their own ideologies and their own thought principles. Like I don't know why that's like such a sharp awakening as an adult who's been on this earth for a few decades now. Like, but it's still just like, oh yeah, it's like actually very hard to change people's minds. It's like people think what they think, and it gets very set in stone very quickly. It's like actually very sobering, but also kind of clarifying, you know, as you're saying. It's like, I feel like my purpose is becoming clear, my priorities are reorganized, and that is like a gift.
Right. Like maybe it is just going to be direct aid over like faith in electoral politics. I don't know. Like, I don't know, but I've been thinking about that. But there are ways in which, like, you know, I'm certainly not optimistic that this will, or it's like, I want to retain hope, but I don't have a lot of optimism, right? Like as it always is. But you know, there's certain things like the Overton window has opened considerably with like universal basic income, you know, stuff like that.
That's true. That's definitely
true. And I'm
true.
like, you know, that's interesting. That's interesting. And I haven't like completely, well, I haven't completely given up hope that, you know, like there's some sort of like, you know, New Deal type, like full sort of reprioritization. But then I'm like, oh, Joe Biden is our Democratic nominee. So I don't know. Like, I
So
don't
we
know.
really don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's been so quiet. Like we really don't know. Like we actually don't know what he thinks.
Know.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Is there anything that is giving you hope, or is there anything that is fueling any part of like an optimistic streak within you?
I think, well, honestly, like reporting out this mutual aid piece for the last month has truly like, yeah, I think there have been like little, just a lot of the things that I've reported have made me maybe hopeful, not optimistic, you know, like just being able to talk to doctors and to be able to, you know, like people who are just to not feel like I'm kind of in this little hole away from, you know, like I think just anything, any connectivity makes me feel better than the opposite. And I think, you know, like the strikes have been making me feel pretty hopeful, like really, you know, the way that, and I actually think that the media has been doing a much better job than normal in centering working class life. You know, like the ways in which, like that subway conductor who wrote that Times op-ed that's blowing up right now, you know, that's so good and so devastating in the ways that, you know, people are talking about hospital support staff, like not just doctors and nurses, but the custodians and transporters and, you know, the ways that like some people are not trying to hear that like COVID is far from equal opportunity and has, you know, like devastated, you know, the Black community more than, you know, but like there's some people that are not hearing that, but I think a lot of people are, you know, and
I think some people are hearing it, but then they're also just like, great, I don't have to worry anymore. Like, oh, I'm not Black, Latinx, or Indigenous. Like, I don't have to worry. And then because, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I'm working through that in my mind too. Like how to feel about people who don't wear masks, and it's all kinds of people, especially here in Brooklyn, but like how to reckon, like parks being extraordinarily crowded in Williamsburg and the West Village, and like just like what I mean, there's so much to project onto it, but I don't actually know, and I'm just a deeply curious human about those decisions and like how people are doing the math, you know. I don't really know.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right that there is that reaction. I mean, yeah, that like, oh, my odds are better, which is like the most like devastatingly sociopathic, like, but I, you know what, and there's also, one, like, and another, like another thing that always keeps like the thing that pops up to like, anytime I'm like, yes, like this new idea is entering the consciousness, like a little bit more, like I'm like, oh wait, like I think there is also, you know, just these like the like fundamental historical inequities that are causing this, you know, the fatality disparity, I think can feel, I mean, even to me, sometimes they feel so overwhelming that you're like, you know, it's like, this doesn't seem like a reality that can be readily changed right now from where we are. And that to me, like the sort of like despair I feel and like the sense of paralysis I feel is really like disappointing to me. Like I feel disappointed in myself and confused, and that,
and that's a really honest place to land, you know. And I think in those moments I read about like Ida B. Wells, or I'll read about like Rosa Parks, or I'll read about you know, specifically I always turn to Black journalists who are writing about like terror, white terror in the South, and like how those women kept being lawyers, like they kept showing up in court, you know, Rosa Parks in particular, like they kept running newspapers. And so it's like, okay, I'm like I get really down and I'm like, maybe I'll just become, you know, an herbalist full time. Like maybe that's what I'll do. And I'm like, you can do that on the side, babes, but you can also like, you know, you can also like live in this lineage and this tradition of people who just spent their whole life trying to raise that consciousness or raise that awareness. And, you know, that's still noble. It's still noble. And the paralysis is just part of the cycle that loops you back around until you get to the next piece.
and something that I've been trying to remember too is like, and like things that, like any longtime organizer always says is that like, you will not see the results of your work
Yes.
in your lifetime. Right. And I think that like that's
Yeah.
that sense of like, that's back to like what we were talking about at the beginning, the way in which this like sort of like, I feel like it's like one manifestation of capitalism in my subconscious, which is like, you want to be able to do something now that will like meaningfully, and I think, but that's not how change works. That's not how activism works. And I have to keep reminding myself that like, just because of like, some inequity is like way too big for me to ever, hold in my hand, it doesn't matter. That's the whole point, right? Like, yeah. I've been having to remind myself of that a lot.
And that's also,
but speaking of like white terror in the South, I mean, like the Ahmaud Arbery thing, it's just like, it's, I mean, like the simultaneity of all of this is really.
Yeah. And that people are actually putting their bodies in the street to go protest that, I think I've had to really set that aside until there's capacity to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I also think about those bodies in the street, and I think about those images of people, who are voting. And now it's been a couple of weeks, so I can't remember.
Oh, the Wisconsin lines.
In Wisconsin, like, I mean, but that is what change also looks like. And there's a particular monstrosity to COVID, and it's this airborne, contagious virus. But but that's what it looks like. That's what it means to like push for change, even in really distressing times. And I actually think that's what's giving me hope, is that people are still, trying to show up for what feels morally right, and for what feels like justice. And it's hard. It's a hard thing to reckon with, but yeah.
Yeah. The photos of the protests, it's so, really something.
Are you open to a couple of questions from the audience? They came in before we sat down to do our talk, but some of them are really sweet. And so this one actually makes sense in terms of what we were just talking about. Okay, I don't know who it's from, but whoever it was from, thank you for this question. Okay, it says, do you think the post-pandemic society will continue to function with the same relentless energy of late capitalism? Or do you think our society is finally sobering up to the realities of the world, kind of bridging off of where we just were?
Yeah, so this is something I've been thinking about a lot in terms of, well, one thing that I think about constantly is that like anything worth, like there's one of the ways in which I can most sort of easily distinguish my own value system from the value system that I often think of as having completely colonized me is that, one of the things that it's been easiest for me to hang on to is that almost everything good is inefficient, like almost like this sort of, whereas like the whole economy would say that what is good is what's most efficient, but it's like love's not like that. Political organizing isn't like that. Caregiving isn't like that. There's not this, huge output to input, like, efficiency, like, and I think that, right now that is both more obvious than ever, that like everything that brings us real joy is not visible to an algorithm and is not, it can't be grabbed by the big claw of capitalism. Like everything good, it might be able to be like touched by it, but but it's not, it can't be grabbed and picked up and appropriated. And there's a way in which that's really, but and then though I found myself with this counter response where it's just like, I'll spend like 90 minutes making some goddamn roast chicken and sweet potatoes and kale and being like, this tastes like I could have walked into a fucking Dig In and got this shit in 30 minutes. And I've been like peeling my potatoes. It was like that Fran Lebowitz New Yorker interview where she was like, the other day I was chopping a cucumber in my, my kitchen. I was just full of rage. Just like, why am I chopping?
Why exactly?
But I do think that, I think that a lot of these sort of implicit principles that, that maximum efficiency is somehow moral, right? Like I think what the thing that bothers me about a lot of the sort of late capitalist like incentives is that there's this air of morality hanging around them, right? That like streamlined is immoral, and as beautiful as possible is moral, and as visible as possible is moral for some vague reason, right? And probably because it's like these things are all profitable, and we think profit is, tied to morality. And there's a way in which all that stuff is like kind of very obviously ridiculous right now. Like what's happening in the sort of celebrity economy and the influencer economy. It's like, actually, it's quite clear that being extremely visible has no moral value and may in fact like be immoral, and I think that at least these things that seem morally useful will at the very least seem neutral and maybe worthy of questioning in a way that they weren't.
That's good. Okay, there's another one. I thought this one was really sweet. It has to do with the implications that the coronavirus has for all those graduating from college in 2020.
Oh, God.
And the larger impact the pandemic will have on colleges in the near future. Do you have any words for the class of 2020?
Oh, my God. Can you imagine if we were graduating into this right now?
Yeah.
I mean, I would be so scared if I was a college graduate, because I mean, I don't know how I would be thinking I was going to eat. Do you know what I mean? Like
where
I don't know.
Like
if you can't wait tables, like where do you get your money? Like, do you know what I mean? Like for all of my young life, it was like, you could always, like there is no job that I ever felt myself above, and just would work any possible job that I could, and right now, if I had just graduated, I would be really, people that don't have like, people that go home, they can't rely on some sort of cushion, their parents are out of work. Like it's really like there's a sort of high level existential vibe that I think I graduated in the class of 2009, and no one had jobs, but a lot of people still had a base layer of security. And even those who didn't could count on the basic things like, you can pick up a shift doing, just work. You can always work. And to have that be removed completely is so scary. I think that, I don't know, for the class of 20, I will say that the things that like my experience of graduating into the recession and having, no money, no stability, and no sense of when I would ever have a job, and no hope that I would really ever have a good one. Never thought about becoming a writer then. It seemed, ridiculous. That turned out to be the best possible foundation for this work, I think. I think because it made me never count on anything, and made me, and it's not a blessing in disguise. I would never say that, but I hope that, if any of y'all are graduating right now, like there's a way that this uncertainty will give you probably a much clearer understanding of the world and its systems, and the value of just like any work at all. You know what I mean though? Like it's like, and I'm glad for that. I think that like ultimately it's been the foundation of a lot of the ways that I think. And I hope that, but man, good luck, guys.
Yeah. And then there's one more that I really liked, which is, what do you want to remember about how you lived during this time, and how does that change how you want to live moving forward?
Oh, that's such a good question. Can you, do you have an answer for it? Can I ask you that question?
I do. It was for both of us, actually, too.
Yeah.
I think that deep embodiment is my biggest takeaway right now. Like I think, living in New York, you live beyond your means in so many ways. You live beyond your financial means, your spiritual means, your bodily means. I mean, so much of the way living in New York is set up is not around what you can physically do. It's like having things delivered. Like you kind of really rely on the infrastructure of being in a big city to kind of allow you to do more than you can physically do.
Yep.
And I think being kind of put in a position for the last several weeks where, you know, what I'm having for dinner is like what I make for dinner. You know, it's like who I'm seeing is who I physically
Right.
make the time to see. And I think there's a smallness to that and like a practicality that I've never been kind of forced to consider. I do have to say no more. Like I do have to pull back more. I have to sleep more. I have to drink more water, you know, and I think a lot about wellness and wellness culture and the way the virus is kind of inspiring people. I mean, oh my God, there's like a whole, I mean, we didn't even talk about like quarantine capitalism, but there's like a whole wave of just like,
oh God,
trying to optimize your life to make the most out of this time and reorient yourself around wellness too. And whenever people ask me what I do to take care of myself, I'm just like, I sleep a lot and I drink a lot of water, because those are things that are not like, it actually does not cost money to take care of yourself or change your life in that way.
Right.
And so I think just that reminder, of what it feels like when there's nothing to buy and there's nothing to do, pretty much is like, I want to remember that when whatever the other side of this looks like. And I don't even know what that's going to look like, but just that feeling of like, there's like a physical tangibility to my existence right now.
Yeah. Having your hands on your life. That's a value that I think about a lot. Because there's this, there is, and New York is so conducive to it, this sort of distant, cold, like kind of almost sexy pleasure in not having your hands on your life kind of, and having your life kind of roll out ahead of you a little bit. But this was a thing that I spent all of Peace Corps thinking about. And I still like, there is a satisfaction in having your hands on your life that, I've been thinking about that a lot lately too. And I think that, I have been thinking about this because another one of the books that I was like recommending to all my friends at the beginning of quarantine is this book, Sweet Francaise by Irene Nemirovsky, which is like, I think one of the best books written in the past century. And she wrote it kind of contemporaneously with the German occupation of France. And she was killed in Auschwitz. And it's a story of kind of like invasion and quarantine basically in the first year of the war. And it's about like love and mundanity in the middle of it. And I was thinking like, you know, we're so ourselves in the middle of this. Like we're like more ourselves than ever in the middle of this. And I think I've been thinking about what that means and wanting to be, because I have been thinking about this exact question. It's like, how do I want to have lived through this time? And I think I have been like, there are two things. Like, it's like a balance between being like taking stock of my resources and seeing how I can use them better. Right. Like what we were talking about with mutual aid. It's like, you know, like how can I do things for my immediate neighbors, and how can I, you know, is there something I can do for my friends right now that I'm not doing? But also, and then it's like that, but I want to live the rest of my time. I think about, I've had this like super like acid trip image of just like a cloud drifting across the sky. Like I have so much luck and I have so much privilege. I have a job. I'm in this like, you know, like I'm upstate right now. Like, it's like, I want to take that and like understand that, I don't know, like I want my needs to be little and I want, you know what I mean? Like I want to be like a little cloud drifting across the sky and like absorbing the sun when I can. And like, just, you know, like I want to be easy. Like I want to recognize the extreme luck that I've found myself in by being easy and being like warm for people that need it, I guess. And that's mostly, it's like, what else do I want? It's like, I don't fucking want to be productive. Like I don't want to, you know? I've been thinking about how to sort of transmute luck in a more like easy way or something. Which I hope I take with me. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. I feel so stimulated and like so present, and I feel like optimistic. I don't know. I'm just grateful that you're working. I'm grateful that you're putting your brilliant mind to use. I don't know. I'm so glad that we know each other in this lifetime, and I'm so glad we got to chat.
I know. And instead of like taking a nice sunny walk, this was really nice. Thank you, Jenna.
So thanks to everybody who tuned in. And then hopefully at some point we'll do this IRL. We'll see. Maybe it's 2025, but it'll happen.
And then I will have had this baby and then I can get drunk.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And then I can play my sound instruments for your baby and like whisper mantras into its ear.
I'm going to text you about these sound instruments. I saw on your, yeah, we got to talk. We got to talk about that.
Sounds good.